Hello everybody, this is Top MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over all of the spoilers for MTG's Zendikar Rising that have come out today and late last night. So I'm going to be covering all the cards that came out after the release of my video covering spoilers yesterday from both the main set and the side products. And so there are a couple, so why don't we jump right into those. Starting off, we have Core Celebrant. It's a 3-cost white creature, core cleric, 1/4, and whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So we're getting another kind of creature that does this, when it ETBs, gain a life. And so in standard for a little while, we had a Johnny's Welcome, which was a 1-drop enchantment that did this. Then we got a 2-drop 2/2 that did this, and now we're getting a 3-drop 1/4. So it does feel like a little bit of a slow power down maybe over time. Obviously, there's the advantage of this one being able to block a lot more, but yeah, I prefer, and it also triggers when it enters the battlefield, so it has that advantage there too. I'm surprised this isn't relevant to clerics though, like it just is a cleric. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was like whenever it or another cleric enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 2 life or something, but yeah. Next we have Tamer Royal Mage. It's a 2-cost blue creature, Merfolk Wizard, 2/1 with kicker 4 mana, and when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is very obviously limited based. You're not going to really want to pay 6 mana for a 2/1 and also return a land or an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. But it is interesting in, say, a deck that cares about kicker or something along those lines, is you can get back a spell that you had with kicker. So in limited, this is probably not awful for that archetype. Next, we have Cheryx, the Raging Isle. It's a 4-cost 0/17. So yeah, if you're playing a deck that lets you attack with your toughness, this is a definite card, contender for that deck. Spells your opponents cast that target it cost 2 more to cast. So it's going to defend itself, and you can pay 3, and he gets +X -X until end of turn, where X is the number of islands you control. So as long as you don't have more than 17 islands, you can kind of activate this ability to swap around his power and toughness a little bit. So if you have 10 islands, you can make him a 10/7, which in blue is pretty good. I actually really like the design of this card and think it could be, you could build some really interesting decks with it. Next we have Nimble Trap Finder. It's a 2-cost blue creature, human rogue, 2/1, and it can't be blocked if you had another cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard enter the battlefield under your control this turn. So as long as you're playing a constant stream of one of those creature types, he can't be blocked. Not great. I'd rather play, a 1-drop for 1, obviously a 1-drop for 1, a 1-drop 1/1 that just always can't be blocked, but it says at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you have a full party, creatures you control gain. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card until end of turn, and if that's the case, he can't be blocked, you're drawing cards. I think this is one of the better payoffs for having a full party, but the payoffs for full parties seem so weak that I don't know if the format, or if the mechanic can really survive. And I'll get more into that in my Zendikar kind of review video, which is going to look a little bit different this set compared to my past ones. Past ones I've kind of just been like, here's an overview, but I'm going to talk more specifically about certain topics and ignore others that maybe aren't super, the limited environment is important, but I'm doing a separate video on the limited environment, so do I really need to talk about it in the review? Either way, this isn't the video for me to be talking about this, so why don't we jump right into the next one. Next, we have Nimana Skydancer. It's a 3-cost black creature, human rogue, 2/1 with flash and flying. And whenever it enters the battlefield, target opponent mills 2 cards. So yeah, if you're in a, draft rogue mill deck, this works well. It also, by the way, let me just quickly make a, statement here. It also is nice that it has flying. For instance, if one of your creatures has an ability only if you have, 8 or more cards in your opponent's graveyard, then that can actually trigger that at instant speed, which is kind of cool. Either way, then we have Marauding Blight Priest. It's Blight Priest. It's a 3-cost black creature, vampire cleric, 3/2, and whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. So this is very similar to Veto, who whenever you gain life, each opponent loses that much life for 3, but he's a 1/3. So this is better statted, but Veto has the better ability, especially because Veto can also give things lifelink. So I'd rather run Veto over this, but as a common, it is not awful. Next, we have Thundering Spark Mage. It's a 4-cost red creature human wizard 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is the number of creatures in your party. So at its worst, this is a 2/2 that's going to deal 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker when it enters the battlefield, because it is a wizard which can be part of your party. I would say if you're in a party deck, this may not be awful, but other than that, this isn't great. I wish it said something. I wish it had more to do with Wizard. I think the individual tribals are more interesting than the party mechanic. Next, we have Shatter Skull Minotaur. It's a 6-cost red creature Minotaur warrior. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. So theoretically, this could be a 2-cost 5/4 with haste, but it's not going to be. Maybe it's a 3-cost. Like in a party deck, it's not bad, and it is a backup, say, warrior if you do have a full party. But yeah, not a big fan of this. Your big advantage is, ooh, I get a 5/4. I mean, yeah, it's okay. Next, we have Shatter Skull Charger. It's a 3-cost red creature giant warrior. 4/3 with kicker 2, and it has trample and haste. So 4/3 with trample and haste for 3 is amazing. So there must be some sort of downside. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. At your end step, if it doesn't have a +1/+1 counter on it, return it to its owner's hand. So okay, here's the idea. You pay 2 extra, and then you have a 5-cost, 5/4 trample haste that sticks around. But the thing is, if you can give this a counter in any other way, this is just a good creature, which I think is interesting. Obviously, you are going to have those red decks that are going to play this, hit you with it, and then it bounces back to hand, and maybe they'll even like that. And there are some decks that like a creature ETB, so maybe it does something interesting with that. So I think this has a lot of interesting applications, and I would love to see how this can fit into decks. Next, we have Verazol, the Split Current. It's X green blue, legendary creature serpent 0/0, and it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each mana spent to cast it. So it's not X +1/+1 counters. You could theoretically cast this for 2 mana, and it enters a 2/2. Which is more powerful than the standard, X ability. And whenever you cast a kicked spell, you may remove 2 +1/+1 counters from it. If you do copy that spell, you may choose new targets for the copy. So yeah, you're able to kind of charge this guy up so that in later turns, when you cast spells, you can copy them. And I think this effect works better than something that you have to pay on the turn. Because if you can copy a spell, but you have to pay for the copy spell, it's much less powerful. So I think this is a powerful spell. The only thing is it has to do kicked spells, which means that you're spending a lot of mana on that. So it means you're probably actually getting a good effect. So maybe not in standard, but in historic, I could see something interesting with this. This could also be an interesting commander for that archetype. Next, we have Relic Axe. It's a 2-cost artifact equipment, and when it enters the battlefield, attach it, because, every artifact in the set does that. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. If it's a warrior, it gets +2/+1. So, woo, if it's a warrior, it gets +1 additional attack. Generic equipment needed for the equipment theme. Then we have Relic Amulet. It's a 2-cost artifact, and whenever you cast an instant sorcery or wizard spell, put a charge counter on it. And then you can pay 2 and tap it to remove all charge counters from it, and it deals that much damage to target creature. So whenever you cast an instant sorcery or wizard, deal 1 damage to each opponent, and actually it's to target creature. Deal 1 damage to target creature, but you can kind of save up that damage. I wish it really didn't cost 2 to activate. I wish it was just tap, remove all charge counters, which may be powerful, but I think that this card on its own really isn't that great unless you're doing some weird infinite loopy thing. I would think this card would be much more playable if it said whenever you cast or copy an instant sorcery or wizard spell, that gives it more interaction with, say, the mythic thing we saw that lets you copy both wizards and instants and sorceries. It lets you, there has been a lot of copying, so I feel like that would have made a lot of sense, and wizards generally like to copy, so I would have liked that. And maybe being able to hit planeswalkers as well would have been a nice addition, and I don't think that would have made the card too insane. Next, we have Myriad Construct. It's a 4-cost artifact creature construct, 4/4 for 4, and it has kicker 3. And so if it was kicked, it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it for each non-basic land your opponent controls, which in a limited environment may be quite high because there are modal double-face cards in every pack. So yeah, that seems slightly good, although at that point your opponent does have to have 3 non-basics in like a draft. That's not going to happen. In a normal game, it really depends on how much these modal DCFs are being used, and if they are used a bunch and then this card becomes popular, then people are going to stop using modal DCFs, and then that means that people are going to stop playing this, which then means that people are going to start playing it. So it's going to be maybe this on-off kind of thing, but It says when it becomes the target of a spell, sacrifice it and create a number of 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature tokens equal to its power. So that's kind of interesting. If you have some way to make it die or make it become the target of a spell, for instance, that you control, obviously you can put more counters on it with things like Basri, and you can just create a lot of 1/1. So you go big, and then as soon as that big, after you put all your eggs in this one basket, if it dies, those eggs kind of hatch out into a bunch of little creatures, if you want to say that. So I like this. I like the design. I think it may have been better in a color, though, instead of making it colorless and giving it, maybe you make the kicker cost a colored mana or something. I don't know. That may have made it more fair, because now every color kind of has this ability to go wide pretty easily. Next, we have Throne of Makindy. It's a land you can tap to add colorless. You can pay 1 and tap to put a charge counter on Throne of Makindy. And then you can tap and remove a charge counter from it and add 2 mana of any one color, but spend this mana only to cast kicked spells. Now, can I use that mana to pay for the kicker, or is it something that I can only use for the mana of the spell? I'm not sure on that one. If anyone knows, let me know, just so I know. But yeah, if it lets you pay for the kicker cost, which I think it does, because I think kicker just adds additional cost to the spell, that's not awful, but you definitely need to be running a kicker deck. At its worst, this is a new colorless land, so yeah. Next, we have the Commander spoilers. So these are going to be the spoilers for the Commanders. Now, I'm going to show you the Commanders, but I did already cover them, so I'm not going to go too much into detail. This one basically cares about rogues and rogues dealing damage, which leads to milling. And then when that happens, you draw a card. So it's milling, drawing cards, and get rogue tribal. So that's what this commander wants. And these are the 2 cards it gets. By the way, there are 3 new cards per commander deck. These replace the Planeswalker deck in a traditional set. And these 3 new cards are the only new cards for each deck. And yeah, these will be legal in commander and all that. We have Enigma Thief. It's a 7-cost blue creature, Sphinx Rogue, 5/5 with Prowl 4, which says you may cast this for its Prowl cost if you dealt damage to a player this turn with a Sphinx or Rogue, which is interesting. It's getting Sphinx Tribal here because it is a Sphinx Rogue. And then it has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, return up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls to its owner's hand. So, yeah, you're going to let your creatures get through easier. The only issue with that is that you don't really get the full advantage of that ability if you're casting it for its Prowl cost, meaning that you're getting a bigger benefit the more mana you pay, which is kind of interesting. Not a great card. I don't expect it to see lots of play, but yeah. Yeah, not bad, but not great. Next, we have Whisper Steel Dagger. It's a 3-cost black artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may cast a creature spell from that player's graveyard this turn. You may spend mana or mana of any color. So yeah, again, more just caring about when you hate your opponent, which means the deck is going to be filled with a lot of that, and we'll look at the deck list here in a second. Then we have the land-based one, who's going to make your lands into creatures based on this guy's power, and you can put counters on target creature whenever a land enters the battlefield. And so what he gets is Trove Warden, 4-cost white creature, cat beast, 3/4 with vigilance, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, exile target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard. When it dies, put each permanent exiled with it onto the battlefield under the control of that card's owner. I think this is really interesting. I think that it could actually see play outside of this deck, and it's just an interesting landfall trigger. Next, we have Geode Rager. It's a 6-cost red creature, elemental, 4/3 with first strike, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, go to each player target creature controls. Each creature target player controls? That is pretty awesome. Now, the issue I have with this is that it's not optional. If you are in a 1v1 with someone and you go to all their creatures, now they have to attack you, and they may not have, but you may then, I don't know, it really depends. I think the fact that you have to do it means you're going to end up making enemies pretty quickly, so I'm not a huge fan of it for that reason. You could theoretically go to your own creatures if you're doing this after combat, in which case it says until your next turn, that happens. So you could theoretically do that, but I'm not a big fan of the fact that you can't opt out. Like, I wish it said to each player up to 1 target, or each creature up to 1 target player controls. Either way, guys, those are the cards. So here's the deck list. I'm going to be doing a more in-depth, detailed look at the deck list coming up here in the next couple days, where I look at the, the value of it and talk about the deck as a whole. So stick around for that. But you can see interesting things like the fact that Soul Ring and Arcane Signet are in here, which should massively drive down the prices if these are in the same kind of realm as Commander, or sorry, as Planeswalker decks. If they're like 15 bucks, it'll be nice to get a bunch more Soul Rings into circulation. And then we have Land's Wrath, which is obviously the land-based one, and this one has some interesting cards. So yeah, I will be doing a more in-depth, detailed breakdown into those in the next coming days. What can you expect? You can expect a lot of price analysis on the set. You can expect my review, some MTG Arena details. All of that will be coming soon. So if you want to see that, hit the subscribe button, and if you like this video, hit the like button, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.